This video, I will talk about license to enter and use others' land, which is a personal property. License is a personal property. Now, so what you can see here is that, okay, you go to a friend's house, for example, as you can see the welcome mat there, you actually are entering on private license. So now, license to enter and use or enjoy others' land is a limited personal interest. For example, you go and visit your friend. After that, you got to leave. So that's why it's limited. And it's limited only for this time. For example, say for example, if I invite you to my house for barbecue on a weekend. So the next weekend, I don't have a barbecue. Can you come? No, that's why it's limited personal interest. Then, okay, I invite you. Can you bring your friends? No, also, because why? If you want to bring your friends, you have to ask for my permission. Now, remember, the word permission is also known as license. Now, you don't have a possessory right when you come over to my house. Okay, let's use other wider examples. Say you have a license to operate a business at a certain premises. Now, if it is a license, that means you will have no exclusive possession of that place and exclusive possession. All right, so that is non-exclusive to you because why? The owner of the place may also be using, and the license can be revoked. Of course, given sufficient notice, adequate notice. Given adequate notice. Say, for example, if you were to come to my house and after that you get drunk and I say, get out of my house, now your license has just been revoked. Now, of course, there are other bigger situation of license, such as MRT work site, for example. There's a construction there going on, and then the license, which is a state license, has been granted to a construction company, for example. But then the construction company cannot register its license with the Singapore Land Authority because why? Because the land is still not yours. And they cannot even lodge a caveat to protect their interests. So now that is the difference between license and ownership. And later on, we'll look at easement right, a proprietary right. Now, so in other words, your license is a limited personal interest. Now, when we say personal interest, means that is non-proprietary. This is not a land right. It is a permission granted by the landowner. So we have many examples here. So I think I will now give you the examples. Number one, say you allow your neighbors to park in front of your house. Now, even sometimes part of your land. So that is called a license. You allow a tenant to remain on the property after the lease expires. Now, of course, after the lease expires, you can have tenancy at will. Now, tenancy at will means you don't pay rent. But then sometimes the landlord will say, okay, never mind. You just pay me rent. I just allow you to stay on. So that becomes a licensing agreement. And of course, contractor working at your premises, they will use their own lock to lock up the premises. So what right do they have? Now, because you give them the permission. You give them the permission. So that's called license. Now, more examples. You enter McDonald's and you eat there. Now, there's a license. McDonald's is not a public place, my dear friend. It is a private establishment. This is a private restaurant. So you actually go in, presumably, to go there to consume their service and to consume their goods. Of course, in this case, it's burger and fries. Now, you park at any public road, any public car park. You don't have land right. You're just entering on license. And of course, the car park fee, you can call it a license fee. Hotel stay, for example, visit friend's house. That's my first example. Or you sleep over at friend's house. And landlords sometimes will be very, very particular about this clause. in the tenancy agreement, they will forbid absolutely absolute prohibition for the tenant to invite their friends to come sleep over and all that. So that by itself is a license. Now, if the tenants start to collect a fee for their friends to share their premises, then that becomes sublease. That's another story altogether. Temporary license to use state land, or otherwise known as temporary occupation license, TOL, TOL. So example, there will be plenty. So I just give you a few. MRT work site, for example. In fact, any construction work site where the developer will have to engage a building contractor or building company to actually build for them, and then they will have to give them the access. So that's called license. Of course, the whole setup, you will need worksite office, worksite canteens, and all that. So all those are examples of TOL. Like F1, this year we didn't have F1. If not, next week there's supposed to be F1 already. So F1 has just skipped Singapore night race because of the pandemic. So that's why you don't see the staging, you don't see the seats, the spectators seat. Now, so other than this year, for the previous races, now the organizer actually do the staging and do all the temporary office and temporary spectator stands. Those are also example of license. Now I have a case scenario to discuss with you. In fact, this case scenario, I have taken out from my 1000 multiple choice question, just to whet your appetite that in my e-revision package, you got plenty, I would say hundreds of scenario questions, hundreds, definitely more than that. So this is to make sure that you understand the concept, because why? When I tell you a story, then I start to ask you questions. Now, so if you do not have the concept behind, now those questions will then become very, very tough. So, okay, now since I already mentioned this in some of my free tutorials, so I just use it now in this video. Now, say for example, a father allow his son to build a house on the father's land. But the father also make it very clear to the son that this is not a gift. I'm not giving you the land. I'm just letting you build your own house here. Since you find all the properties so expensive, never mind. Since this old house so old already, you just tear down, you just build, and then you stay there. So occasionally, the father would visit the son at the new house. Now, so this basically, this statement basically is to show you that the father has actually given him the permission, and the father agrees to let him live there, and the relationship is there. Now, 20 years later, the father died and willed all his estate to his second wife. So now, you see, the scenario changed already. Now, if let's say the father didn't die, and then there is some dispute, so it becomes very clear that, hey, my father allowed me to be here because why? He let me build, and then he even visit me after I built. But now he died, after 20 years, he died. And what happened after he died? The stepmother served eviction notice against the stepson. Say, out you go, out you go. All right, so now, what did the court rule? The court ruled that the son has a right to remain on land. Because why? Because there was a contract. Now, even though the contract is not a sale agreement, because the father never said that this will become your house. Now, but it's a contract for him to remain on land, and it's a contract for him to, okay, you build your own house. So therefore, allowing him to stay on the land is contractual license. Now, allowing him to remain after the father died is equity. Equity. Now, when you study real estate land law, equity is a major feature. You will have equitable mortgage lah, equitable ownership lah, all right, and then you have equitable remedies and all that. So now, do search for my video on equitable interest. So I will
shoot another video on equitable interest so that you will not be confused. Now, okay, so now, license sometimes look like easement, but easement is different. Easement, I no need permission. Easement, I can claim the right under the land law of Singapore. Say, for example, now this new newspaper cutting, this happened in 2006. So that's some 14 years ago. Now, a doctor bought a property and is very, very near. I mean, previously it was one title, two structure. That means two houses. Then 40 years before this thing happens, means 54 years ago, the owner of these two bungalows, actually they subdivide the title. So then all the rich people, anyway, this is Dalby Estate, so it's worth something like 20 over million. So what happened is that the property was sold separately to two very rich people, and they share only one common driveway. So what happened is that when the doctor moved in, the two neighbors quarrel over the remote control. So now one side that had the remote control say that, I'm not going to give you the remote control. I don't care, you park your car outside. So then they went to High Court. So they fought over whether the owner of the remote control, a very rich man, say that this is a license, I don't like you, I don't want to give it to you. Now this is called license. The doctor say that, no, this is a driveway easement. So you see, when it is a driveway easement, of course the court ruled that this is a driveway easement. So the court ruled that this is an easement. Easement means a land right. I don't have to ask for your permission. So again, I will make another video on easement by itself, so that you know. All right, conceptually, you'll be very clear. License is license, easement is easement, even though sometimes they look the same. Now, so in the exam, you'll get very confused. All right, so related topic, like I just mentioned, I will make another video on easement and license, leasing, and lease and license. Some people also find very confusing. So now, just search for the video, right? It should be on my website already, right? So I hope that you find this useful for you. Thank you very much for watching.